This opens up a very bizarre opportunity for the San Antonio Spurs. We have an article suggesting San Antonio going after a very, very interesting scorer from the Eastern Conference, as next offseason his contract is in a very peculiar situation. We have to dive into what this article said, the player that we're going to be talking about, and with San Antonio moving in to their championship window, having some expiring contracts, looking to bolster the roster, bolster the depth for years to come, a move like this is definitely not out of the realm of possibility. We're going to dive into all of this coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest. And I want to start with just looking at the team payroll because, the expiring contracts is a big thing with this team, right? Yes, I know we have so many young guys that we're looking to either extend or they're going to come in on their rookie deals. Yeah, that is all well and good, obviously. Harper there, we're going to extend Jeremy Sochan. Fox's extension has already come into play. But guys like Harrison Barnes, even Kelly Olynyk, these guys are on expiring deals, and those are our two best shooters. So when you're looking at filling the role for the team in the coming years, shooting is one thing that, hey, you really want to have because, Victor Wembanyama, he's going to improve his three-point shot. We don't know if Cornette's going to start shooting them like he did when he was younger. Julian Champagnie is definitely serviceable. We're hoping for Castle to take a leap, Fox to get back to where he was. But ultimately, this team, what you need to do as you're trying to get into this playoff contention window, as we all know, is to have a lot of very good depth. Amazing top-end talent, but depth that just makes your opponents sweat. And the San Antonio Spurs do have that to some extent right now. And look, last year we had lots of decent depth. The thing is, though, the scoring depth in particular, I know De'Aaron Fox's sample is a bit misleading because of that injured pinky. He got surgery on it. I'm fully expecting him. You guys voted in our last live stream, by the way, and most of you said he was going to average at least 25 points per game this year. Let me know your thoughts on De'Aaron Fox's point average down below, but looking at the team right here, 24 points, 20 points, 16, 15, we did have some spread out scoring. It was from some interesting sources, and there was really not that bona fide for most of the year next to Wembanyama, and Fox could definitely come back and do it this year. Vassell could in theory do that again this year, fully healthy. Castle could in theory take a nice jump. I'm looking forward to that. Dylan Harper could in theory provide some nice sparks off the bench, and look, I am all for all of that. But that's where we get to this very interesting article, and I want to talk about this. It's linked down below from Air Alamo, and they talk about Cam Thomas of the Brooklyn Nets, and I know, hold on, isn't that like the least Spursy player you could have picked to bring on this team? Yes and no. I want to dive into this because it is a very interesting article. Go give them the credit they deserve. Go check it out. But I want to bring up this name because it's an outside the box option, like they say, right? But Cam Thomas is currently in a bit of a peculiar contract situation with the Brooklyn Nets. He's been lowballed. Teams don't really value him the way he wants to be valued. And there's a lot of talk of him taking the qualifying offer this year, which would straight up make him an unrestricted free agent next year. And if you're the San Antonio Spurs, you could very well look at bringing him in on that MLE that we'll have next year. Because again, the MLE is a very valuable tool for most teams in the NBA now who are over the cap or pushing that second apron. The MLE is pretty much how a lot of teams are going to have to get their players. Like a guy like Cam Thomas is just straight up not going to get the payday in free agency that he might have gotten at one time before. And no, by no means is he a bad player. 24 points per game from the Brooklyn Nets, 4 assists per game. 44% from the field, 35 from three. Not a great corner three shooter, but the dude can shoot the ball, that's for sure. And hey, on his spot up threes, he's a little bit better than that 35%. Corner three's not so great again, but 24 points per game, that scoring punch that he could bring, hey, could absolutely work for the San Antonio Spurs. But at the same time, I just wonder why, like I understand that a guy like Cam Thomas could absolutely provide a scoring punch to the bench, like a team that, again, if you have him coming in and he can average 18 a game off the bench, that is pretty nice. And again, his spacing works well with Victor Wembanyama. But if we're suggesting this, like, I don't see, look, I'm careful with my words here because Cam Thomas, like, look, I don't mean to slander him as a player, right? And we know, like, he watches, maybe not the show, but we saw him call out Zach Lowe. I think Cam Thomas is a fantastic basketball player. I personally don't see why we would choose someone like Cam Thomas for the way this team is structured. I think a lot of you guys agree because if we look at this here, our bench unit, even next year, let's remove Harrison Barnes and Kelly Olynyk from the equation. Okay, we got to bring in another power forward. Maybe we move Keldon Johnson over there if he's not traded. You move Carter Bryant to the backup small forward, or maybe you play Carter Bryant a bit at the 4, whatever. You look at the guards, you still have Fox, you still have Castle, and I think it's a team option for Champagnie again next year. He's guaranteed this year, but we'll probably bring him in for the $3 million. But Dylan Harper and Julian Champagnie off the bench, Where are you going to play Cam Thomas? Are you going to play him over Julian Champagnie? Is that worth it? Cam Thomas is not nearly as versatile in these theoretical Spurs lineups as Julian Champagnie is, right? So, like, I get the aspect of, like, look, bring in an amazing scorer, because the more great scorers you have, especially like a sixth-man type guy, that can absolutely work. But the Spurs kind of have their six-man guy in Dylan Harper. Am I going too far too early into his career? Maybe. I don't think so, though. I think Dylan Harper is going to be amazing. And Cam Thomas, if you bring him to the team, whose shots is he going to take? He's going to just take some shots from Fox, from Castle, from Harper, from Vassell, from Wemby, right? Maybe you move on from Vassell, you move on from Keldon Johnson, sure. But at the end of the day, look, he's a great player. But he might even demand more than the MLE if another team is willing to give him more. He's not guaranteed to start. He certainly won't start for the San Antonio Spurs. And he's a guy that can get his numbers with a lot of other teams, excuse me, that will give him that starting opportunity. And that brings me to the other point I was making earlier. Like, look, I understand he has a history of pretty good three-point shooting, 38%, 36% on 6 attempts a game, when a lot of these are created on his own. You can see only 54% of his threes are assisted. 46% of all his threes are him creating his own threes. So, you know, he's a decent shooter. But why not, with the way this roster is built, with 2 shooters being unrestricted free agents after this year, Harrison Barnes and Kelly Olynyk, why would you not go get another shooter? Why would you not go get another power forward, another big, someone that can fill those minutes, whether it's a backup for Jeremy Sochan, or if he is not proving himself as the full-time starter, which I think he will, by the way, you just get someone who can start over him. Like, there's so many different avenues you can go to. You can, you know, I mean, free agency is going to be weird again because of these teams and the tax and all this weird stuff. But the Spurs have the ammo to make trades with Devin Vassell's $27 million. You got Keldon Johnson for 2 more years. Again, you trade him next summer. It's a 1-year deal at 17.5. Teams are going to be willing to do that. Why not go for someone that fits the build of this team that can play a complementary role? 6 men who can chuck seem very valuable. They feel great. They're fun to watch. Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams. Manu Ginobili did more than that. That's why I'm not including him in this conversation. He was an all-star that just happened to come off the bench who could do it all. He could shoot, he could drive, he could defend, right? But like, I'm talking that Lou Will, Jamal Crawford archetype, the Cam Thomas archetype. I don't want to say chucker, but it's kind of what I'm thinking, is I guess I just did, right? The guys that can absolutely get buckets. Sometimes they're not bad on defense. But do they really contribute to like winning a championship? You don't really need these kind of guys, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like that kind of archetype is a little overrated when you're trying to build a championship team. So while I understand the sentiment of a guy who can score you 24 points per game coming into the team on an MLE, like, just throw him off the bench and just get him to score, and hey, that's awesome. We're getting 19 points a game for cheap. Does that really, in the long run, will that really improve your championship opportunity? So that's kind of where I stand on this, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Maybe you love the idea of Cam Thomas joining the Spurs. Maybe you hate it. I am not a fan, as you can probably tell, but hey, we'll have to wait and see. But hey, worth keeping an eye on, and I definitely don't mind the idea of the Spurs keeping an eye on any guy that could very well come in on the MLE and seeing how we can replace and rebuild this roster, because we're going to see some roster turnover in the next year or so, and I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Spurs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in every single day, all off season long. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.